Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Am I coming through the mic? Okay, there. Folks online are clapping as well.
I don't know if that mic is really. I don't think the mic is on.
I think it was turned on by one of the other people who is in charge of the mic.
Did I get another one? Can you hear me, Kevin? You can't? Okay.
Not well.
You can hear you.
I was speaking in my teacher voice, that's why you could hear me. There we go. Is that on? No. Nope. Is it on now? No. This is how I like beginning. Does that do anything?
No.
Hello. Let's make sure Eric's mic. Eric's isn't working. There. Okay. We run a tight ship here at UNC Asheville, exemplified by the microphones. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. I know we're going to have a very good time tonight and a really wonderful discussion, and I appreciate you, despite daylight savings time, getting out here at what feels like a late hour here when the skies turn so dark in the Blue Ridge Mountains. This is the last event for the Fall Common Words series, and our text this semester has been I Came as a Shadow, the autobiography of Coach John Thompson. Our first event way back in September, we had a student-athlete roundtable and had a wonderful discussion with a number of young people who play a variety of sports on campus. We talked about the pressures of being a student-athlete, what we wish their professors knew, what we wish their classmates knew, how they handle their mental health during the season, and how they prepare for life after the sport once they leave collegiate athletics. Our second event, we brought Professor Adam Rothman from Georgetown, a history professor at Georgetown, and talked specifically about the 272 enslaved people who were sold by the university in 1838 to keep the doors open. And it was a wonderful presentation. You can find both of those on UNC Asheville's YouTube channel and watch them whenever you have some time. Next semester, I want to go ahead and announce, I've announced it already, but I want to reiterate, our Common Word selection will be a nonfiction book that won the Pulitzer Prize in 2021. It's called Wilmington's Lie, The Murderous Coup of 1898 and the Rise of White Supremacy. We'll have 3 events. I'll be speaking at one of them, so you'll get me for a whole evening. I know you're thrilled. The microphone also will not be working that night. Our second event will be with Professor Mark Gibney. He'll talk about political violence. The 1898 race massacre is the only successful coup in American history. And it was buried, swallowed up by history, and the story has been changed and altered over the intervening decades. And then our last event will be with David Sakino, the author. He'll be here in person in an in-conversation event with me. And we're also planning a very special event, a trip to Wilmington. We'll be doing a field trip, and we'll be letting you know about sign-ups for that and make sure that everybody who registers for this event has a chance to register for that event should you want to join us on a weekend jaunt down to historic Wilmington. But enough about the future. Let's talk about tonight. We are here with a very special guest. And just like our guest this evening, I grew up in Gastonia, North Carolina. And before I wanted to be a novelist, I wanted to be a basketball player. And before I knew who Toni Morrison or William Faulkner was, I knew who Sleepy Floyd was. And I knew who Coach John Thompson was. Basketball has been as much a part of my life as literature has. And since the beginning of my career, I've shared the stage with John Grisham to Stephen King. But tonight is the first time that if my father was still alive, he would actually be excited to be here. I can attest to that. So this is a big deal for me, and I mean that. Our guest is Eric Sleepy Floyd. He is the all-time points leader for the Georgetown University men's basketball team, where a couple of slouches like Allen Iverson and Patrick Ewing also played. He led the team in scoring all 4 years under Coach Thompson. and he was twice named an All-American. After being drafted in the first round of the NBA draft, he became an NBA All-Star and spent a decade and a half in the league, including 6 seasons with the Golden State Warriors and 6 seasons with the Houston Rockets. He still holds the record for most points in a quarter in a playoff game and the record for the most points in a half in a playoff game. After retiring from the league, he's founded a restaurant, he's created a financial management firm, he's coached basketball, and he's worked in corporate partnerships and marketing in Charlotte, which is how I found him. I actually got a hold of his office phone number and called it, and he answered. It was like calling, your high school crush and thinking her dad's gonna answer, and then she answers and you don't know what to say. I was like, Mr. Floyd? He's like, yes. I said, I went to your basketball camp when I was little. And that's when I was like, will you come to Asheville? I snuck it in after that. But it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. If I may call you sleepy, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it. This is exciting, and being up here with a Gastonian as well. We got a lot of history, and what a great place, a great community, and it produced a lot of good people and successful, and just the foundation that Gaston County gave us at a young age just catapulted me, I know personally, to stay focused and really work hard. So I'm proud to be from there.
So that's my first question. What was it like growing up playing ball in Gastonia? What was that like? You mentioned to me your father worked in restaurants, your mother worked in textiles.
Right. No, well, basketball, growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, obviously that's ACC country, as is Asheville. Growing up watching University of North Carolina and Clemson and all these amazing teams as a young kid, my initial goal was, I want to play in the ACC. That's all kids dreamt of, watching David Thompson play and Phil Ford, who was a good friend of mine, and Al Wood and some of the great players, even before I went to college. So that was my motivation, and I want to make it to the ACC and play for Carolina or Duke or Clemson and State, who was a very good team when we were growing up, one of the top teams. They were even better than Duke, had a better reputation at that time than Duke basketball. So growing up in Gaston County, we played basketball 24/7. It's like we got out of school, we went to I grew up playing at Irwin Center, which is a recreation center. That was close to my home that I could walk to, and the only place my parents would allow me to go to without supervision, because they had a lot of supervisors at the recreation center, so they trusted the facility to take care of me while I was there. So we played sun up to sundown. After doing homework, you were able to go play. I grew up playing with James Worthy, who was a great Tar Heel and great NBA player. We grew up 5 minutes apart. And he grew up playing at the Boys Club #2 in Gastonia. And so Boys Club #2 and Irwin Center was always in competition. Like we would always play against them on Saturdays and on weekends and in tournaments. And although I could walk to his house, we grew up playing in different facilities in Gastonia. And so basketball is just a way of life. And my parents wouldn't allow me to do anything else. I was allowed to go play basketball. And a lot of things were going on in Gastonia during that time. And I'm talking, the 70s and the early 70s. So there was a lot of, derogatory stuff going on during that time. So going to the basketball court was refused from everything that was going around you. A lot of challenges that was going on around you. So we just grew up playing basketball 24/7, and we didn't even think about the NBA at that time. We were just enjoying ourselves, enjoying your classmate, enjoying your neighbor, going to the gym to play with your best friends. And that's all we did, and it panned out to work out.
My childhood was somewhat similar. I went to the YMCA, not James Worthy. I was the James Worthy in my group. But we went to the YMCA on Franklin, right in the shadow of Lorraine Mill. And my parents would give us money for the vending machine and bathing suits and basketball. Be like, see ya at 7. That's right. We'll be back. We'll be back when we're off work. You mentioned some things going on in Gastonia. I'm imagining you're talking about in the wake of the civil rights movement and school integration and things like that. And Gastonia is an interesting place. You know, my family's background's in textiles, and a lot of those jobs were beginning to dry up in the 70s, and it led to some pretty lean times. And Gastonia could be a pretty rough place. Is that why your parents were hesitant to let you just go out and do whatever you wanted?
Right. I mean, times were hard. The economy wasn't great. My mother was in textiles. She worked at a facility called Threads Mill. I don't know if you remember that. And my summer job was working in the textile mills. I had a third shift job, you know, so I was going there spending, I think I went in like at 7:30 or 8 and got off in the morning. And my mother worked there as well. And, you know, it was just a tough time. And I just remember seeing my mother, you know, struggle. And it just motivated me to be able to do something positive, whether it was basketball or whatever profession I would have chose. My motivation was to try to, you know, do something good for my parents and make sure that they had, you know, options, you know, that they weren't forced to, you know, to work the rest of their lives in that kind of environment. Although, I mean, we didn't look at it negative. I mean, we were blessed to even have a job during that time. Both of my parents worked. My dad was a chef. He owned restaurants, his own restaurants in Gaston County. You know, I used to go to work with him on Saturday mornings and help him prepare food. And I hated it because I wanted to get to the basketball court. But he made me go every morning with him, particularly on the weekends, to work with him. And once I was finished, you know, helping him out, I was allowed to go play basketball. So during that time, it was challenging.
You know, this is going to come up tonight, 1982, Carolina, Georgetown, James Worthy, your rival, your cross the street rivals from what you're saying. But a lot of people don't know that you struck first blood and beat him in the state championship in high school. So you beat him first. So can you talk about what it was like, y'all going back and forth, and maybe a little bit about like what it was like being recruited out of Gastonia?
Sure. I went to Hunter Huss High School. James Worthy went to Asheville High School. And although we lived 5 minutes apart, they put the school lines right in between, like the aisle of this, where we're at now, right between our homes. So we were always forced to go to different schools. So he went to Asheville High School, I went to Hunter Huss. And my senior year of high school, James Worthy Ashbrook was 26-0. We were like 25-4. We had lost 4 previous prior games to them. And we lost by 1 point, we lost by 3, then we lost by 4. So what happened, we ended up making the state playoffs, and somehow we got put in separate brackets. And our team was so good, and their team was so good, we ended up playing for the North Carolina State Championship. And we ended up beating them on the last second shot in 1978. I didn't make the shot.
Well, James Worthy didn't make the shot to beat you in 1982, so that's fine.
I know. So, but it was amazing. It was great for the city of Gastonia. I just remember Billy Packer. We always remember Billy Packer on CBS and Al McGuire and all those guys commentating on the games, and it really highlighted Gaston County. It really helped put us on the map on a national level, because at that time I think the population of Gastonia was around 45,000 or 50,000, and to have 2 players on opposite teams making from such a small county to play in the national championship game. I mean, just to play in the national championship game, and also 2 guys that played for the state championship. So it's a long history there, and but we were always friends growing up. His family, my family, we went to church together. When I was 4th, 5th grade, James Worthy and I used to sit up in the pews, and make noise. And our parents would come up and yank us down from the pews and make us sit in the front row. So it's a lot of history there. But playing against Asheville in the state championship game and having an opportunity to play against, in 1982 against Carolina, was amazing for Gaston County.
What was it like being recruited? I mean, did that state championship, did it elevate your recruiters? Were they coming around more? Were they coming around, like, who was looking at you, and how did you find your way to Georgetown?
Well, I had a player on my team who was more highly recruited than I was. A guy by the name of John Robinson. He was a great player. He ended up going to the University of Maryland. But a lot of scouts would come in to scout him. A lot of Carolina and Duke and Maryland, and so they came down to watch John to evaluate John, and they said, "Well, we need someone for John to play one-on-one against." And they were like, "Sleepy, will you go play against John in front of the scouts from Duke and Carolina and all these people?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I just remember we were going to play 3 games to 15. And I think I beat him 15-1, 15-2, and 15-1. So all of a sudden, I started getting all these. But I was, I got recruited by Duke, and Carolina came after that. Just having an opportunity to get a free education, that was like a blessing. Having Coach Thompson come down and meet with my parents, and then I had a choice. I could choose where I wanted to go to college and go to college for free. I mean, that was like incredible, because otherwise I wouldn't have had an opportunity to go to college. And so it was just a blessing, and so Coach Thompson never saw me play in high school. I played in the East-West All-Star game in Greensboro, North Carolina, and ended up getting the most valuable player. So a guy by the name of Big House Gaines from Winston-Salem State was good friends with Coach Thompson. So he calls Coach Thompson, and he said, "Man, this skinny kid just won MVP at the All-Star game, and he hadn't signed yet. You need to come down and see him play." And I get a call at Hunhurst High School that this guy wanted to come and see me play, and to be at Irwin Center at 3 o'clock. And I'm like, cool. I go there every day at 3, so So he came in and watched me play, and he walked out in 3 minutes. He watched me play for literally, well, I'll say 5 minutes, he watched me play and walked out. And I remember thinking, man, I screwed that up. And so I ended up playing for another 2 hours, and I'm walking out of the Irwin Center, and he's outside talking to people about me. And when I came out, he said, "I want you to come up and visit." Well, I said, "Well, you left in 5 minutes. I thought I didn't play well enough." He said, "I saw all I needed to see in 5 minutes. I didn't need to see anything else." So, it was just a blessing how I ended up at Georgetown. And to answer your question, the recruiting process was amazing. I was able to take my first flight on a plane. I'll tell a quick story. One of my best friends, I was getting recruited, I won't say to college, pretty big school. And they were recruiting me. They were like, "Sleepy, I know you're best friends with Scott. We'll give him a scholarship if you come to our school." And Scott had went on this trip with me because he had never been on a plane either. So we're sitting there, and he said, "Well," I told Scott, "but if you come, you're not going to play much." So I started laughing at Scott. And my best friend was mad. He was like, "Why are you laughing?" I just thought it was funny that the coach would tell me, "You're going to come, but you're not going to play." And I ended up going to Georgetown, not at other school, and my best friend still killed me. They said, "Steve, I could have had a scholarship. I went to school for free, and you chose not to go there." I mean, he was kidding, but.
What was it like? The coach from Winston-Salem State was a black coach, as was Thompson, and that was a special kind of fraternity of black collegiate coaches because there were not that many at the time. How did your parents respond was it different when John Thompson came? Given the time, given the era, given kind of the political tensions of the moment, did he say something or present something in a way that your parents said, yes, we trust you with our child?
Yes, he did. My mother, we had a few questions we had already allotted that we were going to ask. My mother was going to ask a certain question. My dad was going to ask us a certain question. Coach Thompson sitting in my living room, and my mom asked him, well, what if, typical question your mother would ask, what happens if my son gets hurt? Coach Thompson, I'm going to kick him out of school. And my mom didn't get the joke. So he's like, I'm going to kick his butt out of school. We can't have no injured players on our team. And just by that answer and the way he handled that situation with my mom, I knew that I was going to be going there. And when I went up there to visit, I just remember I went into his office and he had this deflated basketball on his desk, signifying that what are you going to do after basketball? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what's this deflated basketball all about? And then he started going into the importance of education and exposure and opportunities, and he said, now, are you going to be a man or a boy? Can you make your own decision? Do you want to come and get a great education? Do you want to work for everything that you get, because I'm not going to give you anything? Or do you want to go somewhere else? And at that time, you couldn't challenge me like that. I'm like, you're not going to tell me I'm a boy. So I said, I'll sign right here on the dotted line right now. So I ended up signing it right there. And ended up coming back to Gaston. And a lot of people thought, because I had some opportunities in the ACC at that time. And so when I signed up there at Georgetown, I got back. And Georgetown wasn't really on the map at that point. And so a lot of people in Gaston County didn't know what Georgetown was all about. The educational component of Georgetown, Jesuit institution, in the heart of D.C. in Georgetown. So they didn't know a lot about Georgetown. But the man, Coach Thompson, I chose that school because of him, because of the impact. And I just saw the relationships he had in D.C. when he took me around, when I went up on a visit. I mean, he took me to the prison on my visit to see, to show me kind of how hard you want to work. You want to end up in a place you can't get out of. I mean, how many people would take you on a visit to visit a prison? Not many coaches would do that. And so he was just an amazing man. He did things that not by script or anything. He did it from the heart. And I think that's why I ended up choosing to go to Georgetown. And I know I'm jumping around a lot because when I'm talking, I'm thinking about all these amazing stories, and it's just,
And he was so tapped in the community in D.C. with the Boys Club. And that's the kind of environment you came from, these community centers, and that's where he made a lot of his relationships. That's where he got the edge on a lot of recruiters, just kind of having his ear to the ground. Like when he saw you play, he knew he was going to learn more talking to the guys in the parking lot about you than he was watching you play, right?
Yeah, he was asking about my character, my family. He was just stopping random people. Do you know Sleepy? What do you know about him? And he was out there doing his homework. I mean, Big House Games had already told him that I could play. He saw my stats, but how many coaches would come down without even seeing a video of it? He took the word of Big House Games. And obviously, he looked at my stats and watched me play for 5 minutes and asked me to come up to D.C. And I just learned so much just on that visit from him by introducing me to Georgetown and educational component, the opportunity that Georgetown will give me if I worked hard, just about how he was respected around Georgetown. It just, my dad, was similar to me at that point. It just reminded me of my dad a lot.
You were at Georgetown in the late 70s and the early 80s. We got a lot going on politically, culturally, historically at that time. Can you remember some particular political or cultural moments that found their way onto the court during practice? That Coach Thompson might have stopped and said, if anything comes to mind, or anything y'all were experiencing, like maybe with pop culture or music or stuff where he was kind of...
Well, I just remember we did a live interview at this news station one time, and the person interviewing us referred to his team as, how do you say it? Not thugs, but in a derogatory term, with a derogatory term, and Coach Thompson took us off a live set. It was like 5 of us, and he didn't like the tone of the questions, and what the underlying tone of the questions were signifying it throughout the interview, and he just took us off the live set, just walked us out of the studio, and so we get to the practice, and he said, I did that because respect is earned, it's not given, And if you don't earn it, then someone won't give it to you. And I just remember that moment, like, wow, because I'd never seen anybody do that before. And honestly, I didn't think the questions were that bad, but I was young, and I didn't know. And so I just remember him coming back and sit us down and explaining why he did what he did. And that's when I knew, this guy had, he had our backs. Obviously, he was a lot more experienced in the world, and he treated us like we were his own kids. That's how he treated us, and so that stands out.
One thing that I really loved in the book, he says, if you treat everyone the same, you're making a mistake, because not everybody comes to you on the same terms. Not everybody has the same preparation. Not everybody has the same education or the same parents at home. So he said he treated all of his players on a person-by-person basis. So is there anything that comes to mind about things that were in your relationship with him that might not have been in one of your teammates' relationship with him, and they might have had something separate, or he was on them about school, or he was on them about staying out late, or chasing girls, or whatever they were doing?
Oh yeah, he definitely would, depending on the person, would deal with you differently. And if you, like with me, he knew I could he coached me really hard. He coached me hard because he saw that I could take it. He saw that I had enough foundation from my parents and just my coaches in high school that he could coach me hard, he could push me hard. Certain players he couldn't do that to, based on their family dynamics or what they went through, their family situation at home. Their father wasn't present, he was maybe a little lighter on them. He may be a little more touchy-feely. But with me, he was really tough. And I found this out later, having conversations with him. I didn't know at the time. He said, I could push you. I saw something in you that I could drive you more than I could drive someone else. I'll give you an example. Before every season, we had to run a mile. The first practice, we had to run a mile in a certain amount of time. And he gave us the time, and I ran the mile, and I beat everybody. And when everybody ended up crossing the line, he said, everybody made it but sleepy. What? It's like everybody made it but sleepy, and you have 30 seconds to rest. I looked at myself, I don't need 30 seconds. And I just took off. Now, I struggled maybe the second time, but when he saw that he could push it, he would. If he saw something in you, he would. And if he saw something in you, he thought he can bring you out, he would push you. And some players could take it, some players couldn't. But I think he definitely treated based on background and circumstances and what that particular player went through, he would deal with you accordingly to that, I think.
You probably knew that you had a good foundation. You could call your parents if you got upset.
Right.
And some of your teammates couldn't call him.
That's
He
right.
was all they had.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so you got
right.
to be the parent, right?
That's exactly
So,
right. Like I would call my dad or call my mom, and I very rarely let him see like a weakness, or I try not to.
Yeah.
And so he knew, I was good to push to it.
What was it like balancing the stress on the court with a coach like John Thompson and the stress in the classroom at an institution like Georgetown? Especially for 4 years of it.
Yeah. No, Coach Thompson really pushed you on the court. I mean, he challenged you. He would make you do things over and over, repetition, over and over. If you messed up as a team, it was always, if one person messed up, you penalized the whole team. You would penalize the whole team. If someone was not focused and not paying attention, it would kick you out of the gym and make you come back at 4:30 in the morning. Like we had practices at 4, that's before the rules have changed today. It's different today. But we would have to come back at 4:30 in the morning, practice for 3 hours, and make it to your first class at 8 o'clock or whenever it was. And he's just really, it's hard to explain, but he challenged you. He would hide in the gymnasium. We would be out in there practicing, and he would be hiding behind a curtain. And we would be joking around and playing around, and all of a sudden you would hear his voice from out of nowhere. We thought he was out of town recruiting. But you always knew he was around. That presence was always there, and I think that motivated a lot of players as well. If you went into the city, and you got back, say you went to a club or you were somewhere you shouldn't have been, he already knew. He already knew. He would say, well, how was that club last night? Or how was that restaurant? He had so many people in the city looking out for his guys that, he had his finger on all of us all the time.
Was he tight with the professors too, checking in on y'all?
Oh yeah. He had a relationship with all the professors. If you missed a class, if you were late, he already knew. And again, if you missed a class, he would penalize the whole team. And I think that's how he generated or created that team environment that, you're accountable to your teammates, you're accountable to your family, you're accountable to the people that are depending on you. And, one time we were at a restaurant and I didn't leave enough tip. We were in Alaska somewhere and I didn't have much money. I'm trying to budget my money and save my money and I didn't leave enough tip to the waitress. And he took the whole team's per diem for about 3 weeks, no per diem. My teammates are still mad at me today. I see me so cheap. But that's just, he was always teaching. There's always teaching moments with him. throughout.
Was it hard, you were in college for 4 years, which is rare for a player of your talent, and I know people stayed in college longer then. Patrick Ewing stayed 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah. He was on the phone with Patrick Ewing today. He's in Charlotte. He's like, I brought him up here. I said, oh my God. Yeah, both of y'all here tonight? The microphones would have worked then. I'd have been like, get these microphones working. We got 2. But was it hard not to think about the NBA when you were in college?
No. I thought about it all the time. Because at that time, I was so focused on making it to the NBA that I would practice so much. Coach Thompson would try to throw me out the gym. He would come in and find me in the gym and, odd times at night, first thing in the morning. And he would like, Sleepy, get out of my gym. You gotta get out of the gym. But I was so focused on, I just loved playing and competing. And I wanted to be the best player that I could be. And I think the reason why we got along so much is that he respected how hard I would practice and how much I was dedicated to the game. He could respect that. But then there were times he was like, you just got to get out of the gym. Think about something else. Go study.
What was the transition like to the NBA? I mean, it's, 1982 when you came out? What was that like?
Oh, it was great. And it was great. The transition was fairly easy because being coached by Coach Thompson, he's prepared you for life. He's prepared you for any challenge that you're going to see. So I thought the practices in the pros was so much easier than what we had at Georgetown. I mean,
and you can tip the waitresses.
Yeah, I had money to tip. So I wasn't going to get top pay. So, but the transition was the game was obviously at that time coming out in '82. The game was very, very physical in the NBA. But that's the way we played at Georgetown anyway. I mean, playing in the Big East Conference was physical back then. I mean, we were literally wrestling with one another throughout the games, playing against Syracuse and Villanova. St. John's had some great teams. Connecticut had some great teams. And that transition was really easy. And I got drafted by the New Jersey Nets in 1982, and I was getting some playing time, but I just remember Coach Thompson bringing the Georgetown team to the Nets game, and Coach Larry Brown was coaching me at that time. And I just remember Larry Brown didn't put me in the game till about 30 seconds to go in the game. And Coach Thompson got our team there, and Coach Thompson was furious. He was so mad. He came in the locker room and he said, Larry, don't ever take something out on my player like that. I mean, he was one of those guys, he had your back whether he was on that team or not, but playing in the NBA was a blessing, and Coach Thompson prepared me for anything that was going to come my way. But like I said, if you work hard, if you do what you're supposed to do, you'll be successful.
Did you find yourself reaching out to him for advice in the NBA, or just touching base, or?
Yeah, I would touch, but not about basketball at all. It was all about stuff off the court, business, meeting people in the NBA, keeping some people at a distance. He always said, keep your eyes open, listen. He said, listen more than you talk. And so I would reach out to him, not really about playing, but more about life, things off the court, those kind of things.
When you were in the league, this is the 80s and 90s, it's really, in my opinion, if that's kind of when I was coming of age, but it's, in my opinion, the golden age of the league. I mean, you, Jordan, Magic, Bird, Dominique Wilkins, I mean, it's an amazing time. Were you aware of it then? Were you aware of, there's never been anything like this? I mean, that was the era when the NBA became the National Basketball Association.
Right. When I got drafted in '82 to the Golden State Warriors, and Dominique and James and all these great players that I had played against in college and played against in AAU, we had finally made it. In 1982, NBA was close to folding. There were only about 3 or 4 profitable teams. I think the Celtics, the Lakers, maybe the Milwaukee Bucks at the time, maybe a few others. And then when Magic and Larry took off, it really saved the league. And so I just remember playing for the Golden State Warriors. I'm in the locker room and I see this guy walk in. He has fishing boots on. This was one of my teammates. So he had been out in the bay fishing all day. And I remember sitting there looking at him and saying, is this the NBA? This guy got a fishing rod and fishing boots on. Just come from fishing all day, come to the game, you know. So I was like, man, this is a trip. But being in the NBA and during that time was very competitive. You know how to have load management in the NBA where guys take nights off and stuff like that. Man, it was a badge of honor to play 82 games. I played 82 games 5 times in my career. And it came close in the rest of the years of playing 82 games. It was more physical. It was more, the competition was real. I mean, it was, a lot of times you play against Larry Bird or you play against Magic, and I mean, you thought, like, when I lost, I couldn't even sleep at night. I mean, it would just bother me so much to lose, and you had to learn how to lose in the NBA. Because you lose, I mean, I went to the Warriors, we weren't very good at the time, so we lost a lot. So I really, you know, coming from Georgetown, I mean, we never lost. And I had to learn how to lose, I had to learn how to deal with that depression. Like, it would just overcome you. Thank God we had another game so quickly you can put it behind you. But, you know, playing against Larry, I mean, Larry Bird told me he was a few years ahead of me. I was playing with the Warriors, and he said, he was shooting in the corner. He's shooting, and I'm hustling out. That's all Georgetown Hoya players do. We hustle. I tried to block his shot, and he's talking to me while the ball's in the air. He's like, way to hustle, young fella. I'll watch you in college. You'll have a great career.
That might have been the nicest thing Larry Bird ever said to anybody in a game, too, right?
But people follow Georgetown. I realized that a lot of them. I remember Jamal Wilkes coming up to me, and I'm like, man, I'm playing against Jamal Wilkes from the Lakers. He's like, sleeping, man. It was great watching you play at Georgetown, man. We followed each other every game. We watched every game. And Julius Erving and all these amazing players. They were following Georgetown and Coach Thompson, you know, mostly Coach Thompson because he was such an impactful person at that time. And being, you know, one of the first African Americans to really succeed at that level. So the transition it was fairly easy.
What about the transition out of the NBA? How was that?
That was difficult. That was difficult because when you've been playing since age 5 and 6 years old, and you started training, and you get to junior high, you make the junior high team, then you make the high school team, you become a good player in high school, then you're fortunate enough to go to college, play 4 years in college, then you play 14 years in the NBA. And it took me about 2 years to mentally adjust to being retired because I was in such a routine. I had a reason to go to the gym. I had a reason to work out. And that was gone. And so, you know, just learning from all the lessons that Coach Thompson taught us and the deflated basketball always stood in the back of my mind. So my last few years in the NBA, you know, I had trained at Merrill Lynch, and I was preparing for my second life, even my last 2 or 3 years in the NBA. Because at that time, guys weren't playing until their 40s. You know, you were retiring around 34, 35 years old, 33, sometimes 32 years old, you were retiring. And so when I retired, I started my dad, like we mentioned earlier, was in the restaurant business. Don't ever open a restaurant. When I opened a restaurant, then I worked up in New York with Blaylock Asset Management, and I started my own company, and I had a few of those. But the transition really was really tough, and it's tough for a lot of players, whether you're in the NFL, NBA, or in MLB. It's a hard transition. And I think the leagues are doing much better and they're preparing players for that transition. They have a lot of programs, educational programs for players, and in whatever field they want to pursue. And they do an amazing job now. But at that time, there wasn't a lot of programs in place to prepare you for the next stage of your career. And just luckily, you know, and I was blessed to go to Georgetown. I got a great education, had made some amazing contacts and built some amazing relationships. And I just remember one lesson Coach Thompson told us. He said, even though I had a financial advisor, he was saying, go to the bank and build your own relationships. It's your money. You go to these banks and you meet all the presidents, you meet as many people in these institutions as possible. Because when you come out of the league, you're going to need those relationships. You're going to need to be able to call someone on the phone and not ask someone to call them for you. And so those kinds of lessons that he taught us that I utilized in my transition out of the NBA into civilian life.
We'll take some questions from the audience if you're okay with that. Sure. Questions, but I've got one before I turn it over to the audience. How do you feel about the current NBA?
Man, I love the current NBA. I love the young players. I love the pizzazz. I love the entertainment of it. And they're so darn good. I mean, these kids are amazing. Because, you know, we had specialists during my era. Like a guy could rebound. Dennis Rodman can rebound. He couldn't do much else. But he could rebound the heck out of the ball. Then you had some guys with specialized shooters. And then other guys were just good ball handlers. These kids today are coming up. A lot of these kids, they do it all. Like I watched them, I'm amazed at. I watched LeBron play it. He's 39 years old. You know, they have nutritionists now. They take care of them. I mean, we used to eat hot dogs and French fries before the game.
Put your cigarette out and run on court.
Right. I mean, and you know, I wouldn't take time off during the off season, but a lot of guys would take months off. But now, this generation of the last decade, a couple of decades, because these guys are brands now. They're a company, you know, themselves. They're making so much money with social media. The opportunities are amazing. They're making as much money off the court as they are on the court. And I'm not even talking about the superstars. I mean, if you're savvy in social media and can market yourself and brand yourself, you don't have to be a superstar to make money off the court. Like if you had a contract with Nike, that was a big deal. I mean, I had a contract with Nike making X amount of dollars as a player. I thought I had hit the lotto. I mean, I get free warm-ups and tennis shoes. I get as many tennis shoes as I want. All I have to do is make a call. I thought I hit the lottery, but that was pretty much it. You got a deal with Nike. One of the shoe companies, you had a couple of local deals with a car dealership or something like that. But these global companies that these kids are partnering with are paying them a lot of money. And I just think they're so savvy, they're so smart. And they're doing a lot of things, good things in the community. a lot of things the media don't cover is the amount of charity work that these individuals are doing. A lot of times they cover all the mistakes they make when they screw up or run a red light or whatever. But they are putting money back in their communities. They're mentoring kids. They're giving their time. And I'm so impressed. So more than on the court, I'm impressed with this generation of players in the NBA on what they do, giving back.
Yeah. It's a very likable era
It is.
in the NBA. Any questions from the audience? I'll repeat if you ask.
Oh, okay. Who first called you sleepy?
Who first called you sleepy?
Oh my God, great. That's a good one. Well, I played baseball growing up. My dad wanted me to play, all sports. And I hated baseball. Because I didn't like a ball coming at me that fast. And so anyway, we had a 8:30 a.m. game. I'm in 4th grade. I played second base. And the pitch the ball was pitched and the ball was hit to me. And it went right through my legs and I never saw it. And somebody in the stands said, "Get that freaking kid out the game, he's asleep." And my teammates heard it and they started calling me sleepy and I cried over that. I mean, it took me a long imagine being in 4th grade being called sleepy. And then they were always, people would equate it with, oh, you must be slow and you must be falling asleep in the classroom and all of that stuff. And so I hated it, but it's made me a lot of money.
Other questions? Yes.
Sleepy, lifelong Warriors fan.
Awesome.
Saw you score the most points in a quarter on television. I saw that game. Question I have is, the thing that just blows my mind is how players that played in the 80s, and I remember how physical that was, and no three-point line, so everybody was, banging each other. How is it that you and so many other players could play and not get injured, and now we watch, low management guys taking games off? What's the difference? I mean, and now they have all their special nutritionists, they got their trainers, all this stuff.
The question was about how did you in the 80s bang around with guys like Bill Lambier and Charles Barkley and play 82 games, and now we have nutritionists and taking games off and guys aren't playing the full season?
I tell you, I don't understand it either. I don't get it because they take for an ankle sprain. They may not play for a month. I don't get that. I just think we play hard. We play with, not that they don't play hard, they don't play with desire. I just think they're more in tune. I played through broken ribs. I played with broken ribs for 3 weeks, played the best I ever played with broken ribs. Because you just push yourself. And I think the times has changed with support for mental health and injuries. So it's probably much better now, I think. But we just pushed ourselves. Like I said earlier, it was a badge of honor. I was going to make it playing 82 games. I don't care if I was limping or I was playing on one knee. I wanted to get my 82 games. And it wasn't money. I had no incentive to play 82 games. I wasn't getting extra money to play 82 games, or Michael Jordan played 82 games for so many years. You weren't getting extra money to play 82 games. It was just a competition. Now, maybe the money has changed, that mentality a little bit, because they're looking for longevity. But man, we just didn't get hurt like that. Great question. I wish I could give you an answer. I don't understand why the injuries are so pervasive now. I don't understand.
Other questions? Yes, I'm just going to bring the mic to you.
What did you major in Georgetown?
I was political science and public administration.
Yes, sir.
Houston Rockets season ticket holders in the 80s and 90s, so we saw you at the summit easily over 100 times. Thank you for coming. I have tons of questions, but what was it like playing with the King?
Oh my God, a dream. He was amazing. He was one of the best players I've ever played with. I was lucky enough to play with some great centers, Patrick Ewing and David Robinson with the San Antonio Spurs. But with the King, he would always call me out before the games to play one-on-one because he always wanted to play against someone with quickness. You know, he would, Sleepy, come on, Sleepy, let's play. And I would be beating him. And then he would get so mad, he would just back me down and dunk on me to win the rest of the points. You know, Akeem told me one time, he said, Rudy Tomjanovich, it was 3 seconds to go in the game. Rudy Tomjanovich calls a player in the huddle. You can do this and do that, and then we're going to pass it over here, and then we're going to bring it back to this side. So we break the huddle, and Akeem pulls him to the side. It's like, Sleepy, keep it plain and simple. Just give me the ball. Just give me the ball. And I'm like, sure, do it, and he won the game. But Rudy was diagramming this amazing play. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful play. And the kid said, keep it plain and simple. Just give me the ball. His work ethic was tremendous. He was a great friend. He's done some amazing stuff. He's had some amazing accomplishments in the business sector over the years. So he's a great ambassador for the sport. And like I say, probably the best, I shouldn't say that, because Patrick Ewing is my best friend. So I'll say he and Patrick, they're the best I ever played with.
Other questions?
Yes, can you tell us, in the middle, say in the season, what would be a typical practice session be with Coach Thompson?
Oh.
How would that go? And say if y'all played on Tuesday night and had a big game on Saturday, how would the progression of the practices go to that game on Saturday?
So the progressions would be, say on a win, we were playing Saturday, we had a few days to practice. The first practice may focus on defense, all the defensive concepts, putting in new defensive strategies. Second day may be focused, the second practice may be focused on offense, may put in some new offensive plays, may continue to work on the plays, offensive plays that we're going to run in the game. Pretty much give it to Patrick, get out the way. But our team was so versatile, we would work on our full court press, because we used to press for the whole game back then. We would work on our press, we would work on ball handling. He would break down individually. You would have to work on your ball skills by yourself. Work on passing. Obviously shooting. He would make us shoot free throws over and over, where he would put everyone in a line and everyone would have to make a free throw. And if you miss it, then you have to run a suicide. And after about an hour, us not getting through making it, he would say, if y'all pick one person to make the free throw, y'all can go. And they would always pick me to make the free throw. He was like, not sleeping, somebody else. But the practices were tough. I mean, we practiced 3 hours. And they were very competitive. There were a lot of fights in practice. Coach Thompson was a perfectionist. He wanted the play ran exactly the way he wanted it. You didn't have a green light to deviate from what he wanted, offensively or defensively. Now, I was one of the players that I deviated every once in a while on the offensive end. And then, it's a quick story, I remember my mother had come her first game at Georgetown, and I took a shot, very ill-advised shot, and I missed it really bad, and Coach Thompson ran out, and he took his glasses off, and he threw them on the floor, and his glasses broke all over the floor, and my mom was in the stands there. Because he wanted you to do exactly, not that he didn't want you to play instinctively, but he knew what he was telling us was going to work if we did it correctly. So practices were intense, and he really broke it down: offense, defense, then work on your individual skills to prepare you for the game. Just looking back, thinking back on it, it was just the best time. I just loved the practice because it was so competitive. And the players he recruited was tough. They were tough players. I mean, he got a lot of guys from the inner city, and he found me in the country of Gastonia. They were tough practices. He was a tough guy.
Thank you.
Maybe one more question if we have.
Sleepy, I'd like you to maybe compare what it was like as a youth at Irwin Rec Center. Did you have adults supervising you, or were the kids just playing their own game? I'm not talking about there were adults in the room, but were they controlling the thing? Were they, now everybody joins a team and this kind of thing? I just remember playing real informal. And then also, once you got to Georgetown, was there academic support? Now every team has academic support, but I think back then it wasn't as typical.
Tell me first question again.
Did you organize your own games at Irwin, or the adults organized?
Center?
Yeah.
The kids picked the team.
Right. Yeah, we organized our own games, and they were competitive. I grew up playing against James Worthy and I grew up playing against older players. We had a lot of talent to come out of Gaston County. They went to they would come back from college, and there would be some guys that would cheat all the time. And the game would stop for 30, 40 minutes while these two people are arguing. And but the games were competitive. Guys looked out, the older guys looked out for James and myself growing up. They know we were serious about basketball. The older guys would pull us to the side and work us out, work on our fundamentals, bring us in the gym one-on-one. And practices, but we had some good guys. It wasn't total chaos. And the second question.
Academic support.
Oh yeah, we had academic support. Mary Finland, who was the academic coordinator, who was by Coach Thompson's side throughout his entire career. If you needed help, she would find tutors and support if you needed it. And he had. You had to have a certain grade point average, so you couldn't even practice. He was so on top of the academic part of it. And Miss Finland, she saw that your grades were slipping. You had to go and get support. You had to get a tutor. They have much more support now, but Miss Finland was it. I mean, she controlled all of that and got you support if you needed it in your subject that you were struggling in. That was our support system right there.
I think she was the last person he thanked during his Hall of Fame speech, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm sure. She was an amazing person.
Last question.
That comment about academic support, may I share a John Thompson experience that I had?
Sure.
I'm a Hoya. Coach Thompson was there my last 2 years at Georgetown, but that was 74 was when I graduated. He came in 72. But sometime in the mid-'80s, there was an alumni get-together. There weren't enough Georgetown alumni in the South to do one in Charlotte and one there and there. The whole state went to Raleigh for an alumni get-together. But Coach Thompson came to speak, and a group of us were talking to him before the program began. And let me say that he was not just a big man, he was huge. I was looking at his belly button while I'm talking to him. And he wasn't just tall, he was big. But he was talking to us about how the school gave the support the athletes needed. They weren't just there to play basketball. They were there to get an education. and a degree, and he was talking about Miss Bentley, but, so I look up at him, I said, Coach, can I ask a question? He said, yeah. I said, you know, a lot of schools will give their athletes 5 years of scholarship to get their degrees, but my understanding is that Georgetown only gives its athletes 4 years to get their degree. And you may be there to support them, but why don't we give them 5 years to get that degree instead of just limiting it to 4? And he looked down at me and he said, bullshit.
I think that's a great note to end it on. That sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, it's been a wonderful semester. Please follow the website, unca.edu/commonword. I'll have some information up there about Wilmington's Lie around the holidays. It'll list the events. I'll have information up about the book. And I will see you all. We're going to have our events at 6 p.m., not 7 p.m. this spring to ward off the darkness a little bit. But have a great rest of your night, and thank you so much for coming. And we've got copies of the book here and outside. If you don't have one yet, then you're going to grab one.